Oh, okay, great. Yeah, perfect. Recording has started. So welcome everyone. And first we'll have Safa with high-level summaries, and we'll give it to Rick, and then open for group discussion.
So, shall I share my screen?
Yeah, please do.
So, do you see my screen right now? Hello? Is my screen shared with you? Or not? Not? Okay. Oh.
And now it's working.
Okay. Okay, great. So, you can see my screen right now. Is my voice okay?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present to the group. So today we will run for the summary for the module 3, which is cover the overview of the pharmacometrics workflow. So module 3 was presented with Rick debrief and for the case study with, by Felix. So there are three main learning objectives from this module, which is to discuss the value of the project plans and workflows for pharmacometrics data analysis project, identify and gain familiarity with examples of templates to facilitate project planning, gain familiarity with regulatory guidelines and requirements. So this will be the outline of the summary. So I divided the summary into four parts based on the information presented in the module. So the first part will talk about the pharmacometrics workflow, and there will be introduction to the Certara Sharp PMX roadmap. The second part will be about the regulatory guidelines and requirements for pharmacometrics analysis. The third part is about development of an analysis plan, which will be planning for success. The fourth part, it would be the pharmacometrics workflow in practice, which is the case study presented by Felix. So I used the slides presented in the module. I changed it a little bit in the format. So let's begin with the question was why to plan for a pharmacometrics project. So it may seem it's a simple linear process that you'll have the data and run the model and get your results, but actually it is pretty much there are more into this process that each of these processes has questions that needs to be addressed and needs to know how to address these questions. And during the presentations, really explained nicely each of these questions. So actually, to bring down this complexity in the pharmacometrics project, so we need to have a reasonable plan as well as have a clear structure framework for pharmacometrics project. So Certara have this master pharmacometrics project roadmap that presented here in this slide. It's called Sharp PMX, which is developed for a large industrialized pharmacometrics teams. As you can see here, it's multi sub-processes. So each of these circles here represent a process with multiple steps. And different colors in each circle represent one of the member of the team, where the color code is down here. One of the member of the team that participate in this process. So as you can see, it gives a clear structure, and getting familiar with this roadmap actually will give us understanding for the core structure of a typical pharmacometrics project. So in each, I will go briefly through each sub-process. For example, here the project, it starts with the project scoping, proposal, and initiation, which has some of business-related agreements for confidentiality disclosure, master service agreement, and one of the important things in this process is the project scoping. As Rick mentioned in his presentation, that it's about like interrogating the client to understand what are the key questions that needs to be addressed in the analysis, and what kind of outputs will be expected also from the analysis from the pharmacometrics project. So after that, we will begin to the next step, which is the next process, which is the analysis plan development, and that we will talk more about it later. In the analysis plan development, it's important to know that in order to move forward, we need to have a reasonable plan, and in order to have that, we need if the data is available, we need to familiarize ourselves with the data and explore it, and have a review of the data before finalizing the analysis plan. Once we have the analysis plan finalized, the data from the studies will start the process of the data programming, where the data sets are collected from the studies, and they specifies where set the specifications of the data that needs to be acquired in the final data set. So, and then we'll start with the model development. The steps of the model development, I will share it in the next slide. And actually, just like to give an overview how the steps inside each of these processes can take place. Also, it's important to mention, like in each step of these, in each process of during the project, there are QC checks, quality control checks in each process. So we want like to move forward without like discovering a mistake or an error by the end. So you don't need like to repeat everything again. So and while you have your model, there's also the model finalization or validation of the model, which the finalization as was mentioned as well in the presentations, that it can be also done during the model development. It's not only on the final model. After you have your analysis plan, your data set, and you have your final model, so we will do the model application. So we'll get the results. And as you can see here, the reports here, it's not only from the final results of the running the model. However, it includes different outputs, like from different processes. And by the end, the project closeout and archival process, it's important for cleaning up the data and cleaning up the files and piling it together, having the files and the folders of everything that's needed to reproduce the analysis. And this can be needed for the guidelines or for the agency, that the drug will be submitted to. Or it might be it will be used for a starter for a new maybe data set, or to reuse it again. So actually having this very clear structure of this roadmap, understanding in each process what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and actually understanding also the interdependencies of the activities in each process, and in these in each process, this roadmap allow you to have the access to all relevant tools. So it will be useful in each step to know, and they will show it in the next slide. Each step will have the sign for the tools that can help you with setting up these steps. So also having a clear structure and having this well-planned project allow you to help the clients understand how the project works. And also working in a team, it's important to know what can be done in parallel and what needs to be done in a sequential manner. So I just put one slide for one of the processes, which is the model development, in order to give an overview how multi-steps it's included. There are inputs here, which is the final analysis plan, the analysis data set, and there's one output here is the final model. However, there are multi-steps there. There is initiation of the analysis by having conducting the exploratory data analysis. Afterwards, so started to develop the base model, and there are steps for reviewing the model and give the feedbacks in order to develop the base model. And after that, after developing the base model, it will be subjected to quality controls check. And afterwards, it's being the similar steps for covariate testing, and the same thing here is reviewing and do QC until we have our final models. So as you talked also in having in working in a team in order to optimize the planning, it's really important to understand what steps can be done in parallel and what needs to be sequential. For example, here as mentioned, don't start before starting the model development. We need to have the analysis plan finalized. We need to have adequate exploratory data analysis of the PK data. So this is one of the examples that we need to have things done before we start other things. So in conclusion, this part for pharmacometrics project have a level of complexity that requires a proper planning. Certara's Sharp PMX roadmap provides a blueprint for a typical pharmacometrics analysis. So it's a detailed process map for each step, and each step is supported with its relevant tools. Conducting pharmacometrics project as a team can optimize the quality and efficiency. So it can provide good quality work and a quick work as well in sake of time. So some advices that Rick gave during the presentations that modeling is not a single deliverable or single activity of the project. It is just part of it. And the major pitfall in the analysis plan is inadequate scoping. What we said, like in the first process, it was scoping and putting the proposal. So we need to understand the questions that we are trying to address. So it's important to define in the analysis plan what simulation scenarios that you want to explore, as it determines what needs to be included in the model. Do not start modeling unless you understand your data set well and did enough exploratory data analysis. So by that, we will move to the next part, which is the regulatory guidelines and requirements. So most countries have a local agency that governs the approval of medicines for their market. So these are some of the key responsibilities for regulatory agencies related to the drug. So they review the submission package for the new medicines and weigh the benefit versus risk and authorize their use for the market. And after post-market authorization, they will monitor also for the safety of the drug. They also have advisory role for drug companies in the development of the new medicines. Importantly, they set standards for characterization of different aspects of new medicines. So, and this is documented in the guideline documents. So these are some examples of the key regulatory bodies for human medicines. In Africa, there are several regulatory agencies, since we have like lots of countries there. Also, there is the USA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, Europe, EMA, European Medicines Agency. However, in Europe, each country also has its own agency as well. There is in Japan, it's called the PMDA, the Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency. In China, it's called State Food and Drug Administration. Canada, Health Canada. Australia is Therapeutic Goods Administration. So as mentioned, these agencies from US and down there, they have actually pharmacometrics related sections stated in these guidelines. So these agencies there is a coordination between agencies. There is an international council for harmonization, where they get together the regulatory authorities and pharmaceutical industries to develop the ICH guidelines. Also outside of the ICH, there are some coordinations with agencies. Some of the agencies are tightly connected, like FDA and EMA, or FDA and Health Canada. There's also the African Medicines Agency. I was just searching for this one, and I found that these are like they are trying to try to coordinate with the agencies in Africa, but I think it's still ongoing. So in the presentation, it's stated for these guidances that cover most common types of pharmacometrics evaluation. There are two from FDA. One is the FDA guidance on population pharmacokinetics in 1999, And it's mentioned that this is the first guidance to describe in detail what's required in pharmacometric analysis. The other one is the FDA exposure response relationship in 2003. There is one of EMA, which is guideline on reporting the results of population pharmacokinetic analysis in 2007. So, and this guideline really focuses on the reporting of the PK analysis, not so much into like how to do the analysis. So there is also ICH-E4, the dose response information to support the drug registration, 1994, and this is the earliest guidance where it includes a short paragraph on the concentration response, where so modeling is not discussed in this guidance. So in this slide, it gives an example of the regulatory review, and this example is from EMA, since it's very structured and with a strict timeline. So EMA is involved in the review at different stages in the pre-submission, and at the submission is called evaluation, and also after submission and after getting the approval is the post-marketing authorization. So in order to know if you have a submission, so what we need to submit. So it depends on the agency that you're filing to. So, for example, for FDA, they have a pharmacometrics division there, and they like to rerun like the analysis by themselves. So typically, you will need like to submit everything that's need to recreate the reported results for not only the reports. And this is like different from the EMA. It's they are okay with the reports. They don't want like all the details because they are not having, to my understanding, they are not having a division there or a pharmacometrics department there that will rerun, but actually they contact expert in pharmacometrics and they review the reports for them. And so actually it states like what they actually need and in which format. So if you have your analysis, for example, if you have your analysis data set, it's in another format. So we need to take this into consideration while planning that there will be a time to convert this file from this format to the other format in order to be ready for submission. So in conclusion, there are dedicated regulatory guidances that describe specific pharmacometric applications, and these are part of a much more extensive guidance framework. A comprehensive package of report, datasets, model codes needs to be prepared when including pharmacometric analysis in regulatory submissions. By that, we will move to the third part of the summary, which is the development of the analysis plan, which actually is planning for success. So we'll start why we need to have an analysis plan. Typically because in some cases it's required if the analysis is planned to support the regulatory submissions, so we need to have an analysis plan included in the submission. But sometimes actually it's not required, but it's still useful because it can keep the analysis focused on what it needs to achieve, and also to understand the different steps in the analysis and how to have those steps executed, and to document the inputs and the outputs, and also having a plan. It's make it explicit to the client what to expect from the analysis. So Certara has the modeling and simulation analysis plan template, where usually they are using it as a base for the analysis plan in their projects. So this plan have very nice features that the template can accommodate population, PK, PK/PD, and exposure response evaluations. It depends on the type of analysis that the project will handle. And the template has considerable amount of pre-populated text. So this will facilitate efficient development and writing of the plan. And the template follows, and this is one of the important features, that the template follows the FDA and EMA guidance for population PK. So all required elements mentioned in these guidance are covered in the template. So the analysis plan, much of their contents, like the introduction, the methods section, is can be used in the reporting, in the report, in the final report. So here's overview for the table of the contents and what are the elements included. And you can find here, like, all the elements are included, like from introduction, analysis objectives, materials and methods, the data set preparation, data programming, and modeling and simulation analysis. And here are like the population PK analysis, population PK/PD analysis, exposure response analysis. So you can choose like whatever that it depends on the project that's going on, which analysis are focused on. Simulation, reporting, QCs, so, and references. So all the elements are included in the template, and it depends on, you don't need like to include like all like the analysis if the project doesn't need it. So we need to have some consideration while we are developing the analysis plan. So we need to make sure that the plan is flexible enough. So the plan, actually, developing an analysis plan, it's important if the data is available, that we can explore the data before finalizing the analysis plan, because actually the analysis plan is stated everything will be done during running the pharmacology project. However, the data is not explored in depth, and maybe unexpected features in the data will arise, which will require a different analysis approach. So if the data available, it will be important, like to review the data before finalizing the analysis plan. But sometimes for blinded study data, so we need to have like the analysis plan done and finalized before having the data available. So in that case, we can introduce sufficient flexibility in the proposed analysis methods. For example, explore range of model structures and etc. So in conclusion, the analysis plan is an important factor for success of your analysis, and make sure your plan is sufficiently detailed to help others understand the planned analysis, and yet keep it sufficiently flexible to be able to apply fit for purpose methods. Analysis plan is the basis for your report. I remember also one of the questions rose in during the presentation, that if somebody have a deviation from the analysis plan, how to deal with that. And Rick answered that there will be a section in the report, is called deviation from analysis plan, that you can state what exactly happened to deviate from the analysis plan. So by that, we will move to the last section, which is the pharmacometrics workflow in practice. So this is actually a large scale pharmacometrics project. Felix nicely presented it. It's about the drug is called Trodelvy, which is an antibody drug conjugate. I will not go in too much details about the mechanism of this conjugate, and to just save time. So basically, it's a humanized monoclonal antibody that is linked um, to the drug through a linker, and this will allow a targeted cancer therapy. So the important thing here that they have 5 analytes to be included in the analysis. And actually, in the next slide, we will show here the planning. So it was a complex project with a tight timeline. So it required like a proper planning. It was the timeline was 4 months. It was 3 different studies for 3 different indications in 3 different diseases, 3 different types of cancer. There are 3 major analyses, which is non-compartmental analysis, CQTC analysis, population pharmacokinetics, and exposure response analysis on the 5 analytes. So they use the Certara's Sharp PMX roadmap, and which provide the tools to support each step. Having this complex project is important to determine what can be done in parallel and what should be done in sequential in order to deliver your output in the time frame. So this is the team that participate in the analysis. It's composed of the project lead, project manager, clinical pharmacologist, data programmers, pharmacometricians, and medical writers. So I will just show one of the slides that shows here the team collaboration and planning for the population PK analysis with the exposure response analysis. And here you can see the first 3 steps that it need to be done in sequential. However, they're like in this step, the analysis of the population PK analysis for the 5 analytes, it can be done in parallel. And while doing the programming the data for exposure response can start while having the outputs from the PK analysis in order to run the ER analysis. So you can see here that 17 of the team members are participating in this analysis. So what's really important here is the outcome, which is this is the report, Certara's population pharmacokinetic exposure response report, and you can tell here that the results from the analysis can be actually part of the label that will benefit and impact like the patient. So with that, we can take away that the work has been done is relevant and has a direct impact on clinical trial pipeline on patients. And so our goal is to provide quality and meaningful data using highly efficient processes. So this needs planning, make a good use of the resources, like the Sharp PMX roadmap, efficient team, and communication. And by that, so I end my my summary. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Safa.
Shall I start
Nice summary.
or completed?
Yeah, great. So I believe you did a nice summary on the type of work we typically do to support submissions and how we can plan and execute a regulatory quality type of PK/PD ER analysis. I put a link to the current FDA population PK guidance, which was finalized in 2022. in the initial iteration of the APT program, it was still under review. Basically, we have now like a guidance 20 years later. And I noticed two of you has submitted assignments. But yeah, one of the assignment in the module is try to compare like what changed between 1999 and 2022, what was updated, and then to compare high level with the guidance in Europe to notice differences, if any, between the two. We typically try to frame our analysis so they are readily compatible for like Europe and FDA and worldwide. Thanks. Rick, would you like to share with us some of your input and maybe what was the planning behind Sharp PMX and how it's being used and what efficiencies we gain? Yeah, thanks.
First of all, Safa, you did a great job in summarizing that module. I did something similar for last year's program, and I had the slides ready to go once more, but essentially you've been stealing all my thunder there. But you did a great job. I think you summarized it all very well, really highlighted the key points why proper planning indeed is helpful and important for a pharmacometrics project, especially, of course, in our environment, because as you also mentioned, and also shown in the case study, sometimes the projects that we do for our clients can become very complex and requiring a large team of pharmacometricians to support such a project, and those resources need to be optimally aligned relative to each other and optimally connected. We need to make sure that we have good handovers of work from one consultant to another one, and time that all in such a way that we deliver the ultimate results on time. And a project can become very complex, and if you don't have the planning, then you won't be able to meet the oftentimes strict timelines that we are encountering with our clients. So the whole idea for this roadmap was born out of this idea. Indeed, we need to have a more consistent way of planning our projects. And of course, as Saitara, we're doing lots of projects, really hundreds of projects per year. So becoming more consistent and structured in that also helps our consultants to orient themselves in every new project that they are picking up. Because our consultants, they move from project to project, and they typically will be covering maybe up to 10 different projects in a given year. So if we have a bit of a standard way of managing these projects and running these projects, that helps also for our consultants to be more comfortable in delivering on those projects. And we also saw an opportunity to bring really everything together within that roadmap by providing through that roadmap access to all the tools that we have been developing. Over the years, we have been developing not only templates that you're mentioning, but also we have been developing a lot of standard analysis scripts, such as, for example, for goodness of fit plots or for doing a visual predictive check. And many more types of programs have we been developing to help with certain components of a pharmacometrics analysis. Those were somewhat scattered around. We had them at different locations, and this roadmap really provides a single point of access to all the tools that we have. And it's not just scripts, it's also, for example, some standard operating procedures, so some essentially guidance documents that help, but that provide, let's say, structure to our overall organization and make sure that we comply with any quality guidelines that are there. So it's this broad range of resources that we can access at the right point in time through this roadmap. Because if we are, for example, in that-based model development, there are certain scripts that are useful at that point in time, but if you go to the roadmap and you are in that base model section, then there's what is called master tools list, and that gives you access to all the relevant scripts that you could use for the base model development. So I think this has been proven very useful. This roadmap, I think we're now using for probably 4 years or so, almost 5 years. It's being updated on a regular basis. Of course, we develop new scripts, we update scripts, our templates get updated as guidances from regulators come out, and we need to update our ways of working. But we always make sure that we have the most up-to-date versions connected to our roadmap, so that people can always access the most up-to-date templates and scripts. And I think it works very well. I think it's really one of the strengths. Of course, we have the benefit of being a large organization with a lot of people that can also provide input into such a big thing as a roadmap. It's probably not beneficial for someone working on his own to develop a roadmap like that for yourself. It's really, I think it benefits such a large organization as we have to a large extent. So I think that probably on planning, I may want to bring up a few slides which you didn't pick out so far. Not that you did anything wrong there, but I thought maybe it's helpful for everyone to. Oh, sorry, I'm struggling a little bit with Zoom, but you should be seeing this.
Yeah, we see your screen.
Yeah,
it's all good.
What I really would like to point out is that the roadmap is really it's a blueprint. It doesn't mean that every project has to go that way. So it's the way I see it, it's always helpful. I'm very much visually oriented. I like to see plans as a scheme in, let's say, with blocks and arrows and things like that, because it helps me understand the structure of how things hang together. And especially with a project that's more complex, yeah, for me, it always helps to visualize that. The roadmap has really boiled down a pharmacometrics project to its core structure. Still, it contains elements that may not apply to every project. So it's important to not take it as every pharmacometrics project should look like this roadmap. Just take it as, let's say, a basis to start from and to work from, and you can adjust your plan accordingly based on how the specifics of your own plan. For example, your plan may be much more complex on the PK side and have several models that need to be developed potentially in parallel, but potentially also sequentially. That's essentially the roadmap, I think, gives you a framework to put some thought in how to optimally plan your project and how to optimally structure it, and understand and assess also potential interdependencies between activities. So what activity really needs to be completed before another one can start, and what activities can actually be done in parallel. So that parallel versus sequential question is a key one that you often will come across, especially as projects become a bit more complex. Of course, the team aspect is also really important. And one of the key reasons why planning is essential. The more people that are working on your project, the more important it is for each and everyone to understand their role in the overall project and how that relates to the activities of others on the project. And that's also where proper planning helps in achieving that. What I wanted to point out also is that pharmacometrics as a discipline, it's very easy as a pharmacometrician to do everything yourself, and it's actually also good to do everything yourself to understand what it actually entails. For example, to create an analysis data set, or to run a visual predictive check, to do a bootstrap. Every piece, I think it's important that you have felt it yourself, what some of the challenges are. At the same time, people will develop certain strengths in particular aspects of pharmacometrics activity. There's no single pharmacometrician across the world that can, in the best possible way, address all the potential issues that you could come across in a pharmacometrics project. So understanding where the strengths are of your colleagues and really leveraging strengths and having specific people work on specific parts of your project. Of course, again, it becomes more important in an organization like ours. But seeing pharmacometrics not so much as a soloist, trick, but really something that you can do as a team, I think is really beneficial, because it can also bring in a diversity of backgrounds into your project, and someone that comes in with more of a statistical background or more of a biology background or of a clinical background can be hugely beneficial, and having that mixed together on a team only can benefit the quality of the project and also the impact it ultimately will have. So also when you yourself are working on a particular project, think where potentially you have some weak spots yourself and where maybe others can contribute to your own project. Probably you'll benefit quite a bit from that. Let's see what else. I think this I already mentioned the question around parallel versus sequentially, and this slide provides some examples of when you should or could be considered doing things in parallel versus when it really needs to happen sequentially. So when you really need to have something finished before you can actually start with the next component. And yeah, definitely something to give a thought as you embark on a pharmacometrics project. Okay, so that's for, let's say, the planning part. Samir already had mentioned that on the regulatory side, that indeed actually this was just after me delivering this first lecture to our 2022 program that the FDA guidance on POP-PK was released, because I think it wasn't even a month thereafter. So that's now available. That's the most up-to-date guidance on population pharmacokinetics. So definitely a great resource to look into, and you have an assignment to look into that. So please do so. It's I think quite educational. Other part of the regulatory side that I wanted to mention, historically there always has been the distinction between the European agency and the US agency, the FDA, in that the US agency has their own pharmacometrics team, and as such they essentially redo every analysis that you submit to them. They redo that themselves, and they want to have the analysis data set, they want to have your modeling scripts, and they may use those. Sometimes they will just start from scratch and develop their own scripts. And EMA only has been basing their review on the reports. So they never have asked for data or model files. They just look at the report and they do their review based on that, and they ask questions based on what they see in the report. However, also 2 years ago, EMA has announced a pilot that they also will start to review raw data as part of the review of submissions. This announcement was not specific to pharmacometrics, was more in general. So probably they will start with looking more at the clinical data and the pivotal statistical analyses that are being done. But this may ultimately also impact what we need to submit for pharmacometrics to the EMA. At the moment, we are not submitting any pharmacometrics data, data sets or model files to the EMA, but it's quite likely that that will change over time. Let me see what else. I think the rest was all covered very well, Safa. Yeah, maybe just to point out the case study that Felix has presented, just to let you all know, Trodelvy is a project that has been hunting us for many years. This was probably the first big effort we put on it, but in the years thereafter, and this was completed in 2021. But since then, we have been continuing to support the project, and dozens of people on our team have been working on that, because it's a complex one, especially on the PK side, because of the multiple entities that are being measured. So the multiple PK models that have been developed in parallel. And then there are multiple efficacy and safety endpoints that are then correlated with all these different entities. So you can imagine that altogether results in a lot of different analyses. So as such, yes, it's a great example to present. Same time, luckily, it's not the standard. These are not, let's say, our everyday projects. These are really the exceptions in terms of complexity and also size of the team. The 17 team members that Felix has mentioned to you, probably not a record, but it's getting close to it. Typical projects, we have teams of 4, 5, 6 people altogether, and that includes some data programmers and modelers, and sometimes also a clinical pharmacologist. And that's typically the core group of people that supports our typical pharmacometrics project. Okay, so those were some additional comments. I'm happy to address any questions that anyone may have based on what I've said, based on Sapa's summary, based on what you've seen in reviewing the video from the original module. And yeah, I'm happy to address any question that you may have.
Thanks, Rick. Yes, so we can field your questions. I know some of you has already done some analysis in your academic world or previous or current jobs. So it's good to have your perspective or what you found to be different, for example, in what we presented to you, or what elements you've seen that you valued, or do you agree or not agree with. It's good to have your input. And while you work out your question, I just want to mention how important it is. It was mentioned several slides to keep like the end, what questions you are trying to answer in mind. So you plan your analysis plan, but also you plan your model, because some questions your model can't even answer if your model don't support this feature. Like if you want to model, say, how we lose efficacy over time, you need your model to have this feature, otherwise you can't describe it and so on. So it's always important to keep in mind what questions we are trying to answer ultimately. So yeah, Francis, I see your hand up, please. And maybe a very brief intro for Rick. First time he meets you.
Well, actually, not the first time.
Oh, you've already met.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Samir. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Safa and Rick. Yes, I'm Francis. I'm a postdoc pharmacometrician at the Infectious Disease Institute, just for introduction. Mine is not really a question, but I'm just curious because from an academic background during my doctoral work and the work setting I'm in now, you're almost the first person. You take the project from the first phase to the last phase. So you would have to do the data compilation, the exploratory analysis, and all these other steps, including writing the final report. So when I look at a setting where we have these different, you have a data programmer as a separate title, and then you have the pharmacometrician as a separate title. I'm curious as to, especially with the data programmer, do they need to come from a pharmacometrics background, or these would not necessarily be pharmacometricians? Because with a certain type of analysis, you want the data to be formatted in a certain way. So naturally, you would think the person should have an idea behind how the software works.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'm also curious the title of the scientific writer. What exactly do they do? Do they need to have some basic understanding of pharmacometrics, or they come more from a more general medical background or something of that sort? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so data programmers definitely they need to have some understanding of the structure of the data sets, but they work very closely together with the pharmacometrician. So they don't develop their data sets in isolation. Typically, at the start of building an analysis data set, the starting point there is a data specification document. And that's actually developed between the data programmer and the modeler who ultimately is going to model the data set. So it's typically the pharmacometrician that then will provide some specific input as needed in order to get the exact structure to address certain aspects that need to be included in the model. So that it's important that there is a clear communication between data programmer and pharmacometrician. Most of our data programmers come in with a pure data programming background, so experience with SAS software is typically a basic requirement. Some of them already have been programming PKPD data sets, so that they know about the issues that you may come across there, but many of them also are trained within Certara to work on PKPD data sets and the specifics of, for example, the non-MEM software for your data set specifications. So it's really, I think, the key to success here is really that there is a close alignment and communication with the pharmacometrician, and that the data programmer isn't left on his own to develop a data set. And when you mentioned the writers, we actually we have a large medical writing team within Certara. They are, I would say, more general medical writers. They typically write clinical study reports, regulatory documents, but then more standard clinical documents, summaries of efficacy and safety. So many of them have a biology background or a medical background, so they have an understanding of, let's say, the terminology and the concepts that play a role in clinical drug development. We don't have any specific medical writers with a pharmacometrics background. However, we have a dedicated group within our larger medical writer pool that now has become, let's say, more familiar and in a way, through experience, trained in writing pharmacometrics reports. So they understand what is critical to those reports in order to make them sufficiently comprehensive and convincing towards regulators. So we have a dedicated pool of writers that support our pharmacometrics reports.
May I just have a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, given that the ultimate report is a product of so many brains, who exactly interfaces with the regulator, submitting the report? And is there like one person within the project that is dedicated for that?
No, not so much. So of course, we at Certara, we are almost always, we are writing these reports for a certain client, a pharma company or a biotech company, and ultimately they submit the whole package to the regulators. So the key interface with the regulators initially is that client or individuals on the client. Oftentimes, when, for example, with smaller biotech companies, they don't have any pharmacometrics resources in-house, so they really rely on our expertise. So oftentimes, when a report is being submitted, regulators will come back with certain questions, and they can be simple questions, but they can be also very, very difficult questions. Typically, those questions then come back to us because we bring the pharmacometrics expertise, so we respond from our pharmacometrics experience to those questions, but always through the client. So the key interface is typically that the folks in that pharma or biotech company that have submitted a certain package to the regulators.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
So the analysis plan and the scoping aspect of the project, is this something that is already shared with the regulator, or it's something rather internal?
The analysis plan is again, it's typically the client who decides whether or not to submit that to regulators. But if it's felt critical to get the input from the regulators to make sure that they agree with the way we are going to do a certain analysis, for example, what data we are planning to include in a certain analysis, then the analysis plan quite regularly gets shared to regulators before we do any analysis, just to get their buy-in. The scoping of a project is really something between us and the client. So that's the step before the analysis plan, so to say, and that lines out essentially the analysis more from a contractual point of view. What are we going to deliver for you? And of course, what are you going to pay us for doing that?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions? Thanks for those questions, by the way, Francis. I'm aware this is all pretty abstract, and seems quite far off the actual work of developing a model and looking at data. Still, having this as a background in mind, as you embark on a pharmacometrics project, you'll experience it. It's useful, especially bringing some structure to analysis. And you will see, and of course, it's the specific setting that we are in as Certara. It all needs to be structured and regimented. But for example, making sure that you do a good exploratory analysis of your data before you embark on modeling, that very basic approach is very valuable. It's all too easy, and I talk from experience. When I started as a pharmacometrician, I was completely absorbed by models and developing models. So I wanted to start and develop a model as quickly as I got the data, without even really looking at the data. And I've learned my lesson that actually first exploring the data and getting a good understanding before you actually start doing any modeling is pretty much essential. That just as a very basic piece of advice. Somewhat unrelated to the topic of this module.
Yeah, and just a comment, once we work out your paperwork and you get your Certara emails, you will be able to get to our SharePoint and access roadmap, like the interactive version live. So you click and you see all the document.
You will have access to all the tools and can actually benefit from those as well. Most of them are in R, so they're easy to use.
I'm looking to see if anyone has raised hand or
doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Mohammed.
Thank you, Safir and Reed, for the presentation. Mine was, while I was going through, I noticed it was more towards client-oriented. So before now, I was wondering who generally can be a client, but you've mentioned some bio companies can be, or maybe you can elaborate more on it.
Sure. Yeah, honestly, actually, everyone can be a client. In the end, I hope that at least most of the pharmacometrics analyses that are being done in the world, whether it's in industry or in academia, they serve a specific purpose, and they are there to address certain questions, and typically questions that others have. So the recipient of the answer and the one that asked that question, that can be your client, and it can be, for example, a clinician that poses a certain question to you, and from which from asking that question, a project may have developed where you're getting a bunch of data from him or her that you're analyzing. It can be within a pharma company where, for example, a clinical team needs to go to the next milestone in their development program and needs to understand what's the optimal dose regimen to take into that next phase of development. In that case, the client is a clinical team. And then, for example, you're not going to put down a contract to describe what you're going to do for them, but still some sort of an analysis plan probably will be useful to align on. So what? Sorry? Okay, not sure that was intended for me. Anyway, so the definition of client can be very broad. That's what I wanted to convey. It's not necessarily, let's say, someone that pays a consultant to do an analysis. It can be any recipient of our work. So if we look at it from that angle, then actually trying to imagine how you can use these types of templates and structures to support projects that are, for example, indeed in a more clinical setting. I would encourage each of you to try to have a look at these tools also from your own perspective, and not assume this to be only useful in the context where Samir and I are working as consultants to pharma companies.
Thank you, Rick. It's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I see Safa hand up.
Yeah, Safa.
Hello. So I was having a question. So with regard to the model development, and you said like there will be lots of checks and validation of the model during the process of the development. I just wanted to know, like, whether we'll be doing that. Of course, we're having different projects and different teams. For our projects, we will be able also to do that for our model development, using maybe the checks in the roadmap. Mm-hmm. Maybe if you can give us more insight to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I think it's during model development, it's also always a careful balance between how much do you want to check and assess at every step of the way, or do you build in some key milestones within your model development where you do let's say a full check and include, for example, a visual predictive check, all the goodness of fit plots that you can think of to ensure that your model is robust at a certain stage in the development. If you would do the same visual predictive checks, for example, at every step along the way, it will take a lot of time. So there's always, it's important to understand and decide on what's the appropriate balance there. That said, yes, for example, we have a standard goodness of fit plot, which is very easy to run. So that's one I would definitely probably run at each and every step along the way during your model development, because it's quick. You have a quick insight in how your model performs. It will help you understand if you're not going off tangent completely, and if you're really addressing some of the remaining issues that you see in your model not entirely fitting your data, and why you are making certain adjustments, then it's of course always good to confirm that you're going in the right direction by using those goodness of fit plots. But I said it's also a matter of being somewhat intentional in when and to use and implement those checks and when not. But that's again also probably something that comes also with experience. So probably as you build experience as a pharmacometrician, I would say initially probably better to do too many checks than too few, because it's very easy to go completely off tangent if you don't check regularly if your model is still performing well from every angle.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Just to complement, so we will have separate modules, say on model development, model qualification. Yeah. And in this module, you will have data sets that we give you with codes, etc. So you can practice and apply what you are learning with the assignment. Of course, depending on the nature of the project you will be doing with the sponsor, you might be able to apply components of what you are seeing in the lectures, depending what type of model. But in general, as Rick mentioned, any type of model has a kind of goodness of fit. Is the model performing well, and so on. But yeah, we'll have opportunity to apply with codes and data set I give you with the module, and additionally with your real quote-unquote data that you will be analyzing with your sponsor.
Okay, anyone else still? I am available. Of course, we don't need to unnecessarily belabor this. Probably not.
See, like especially, yeah, please don't be shy if you have a comment or questions or like input. It's time to share with us any aspect of the lectures that you maybe was not clear enough, or aspects you've seen different in your academic life. So it's good to have your perspective. I also realized that we didn't take a break. I don't know if we need one, if or we can just finish early. There is no more questions. Separately, again, you will be receiving from our HR contract to sign very soon. They are working on the paperwork, and after which you will get a Certara email and access to our infrastructure. I know some of you already had meeting with your like data owner, your sponsor, with your respective projects. So some of you reach out on data sharing. Again, once you get Certara email, you will have a SharePoint where you can access and share data with the client. And of course, you will get access to our like servers and software once all this is done.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
I see that Safa has raised her hand. Did you have another question, Safa?
Yeah. So actually, I have two questions for. So one of them, so from your experience in the real life, so from the feedbacks from the regulatory agency, like maybe FDA or EMA, so sometimes do they require redoing analysis or add new types of analysis, or maybe asking for studies really to be incorporated in the submission. This is one thing, and the other thing it's actually about the face-to-face meeting. Colin mentioned that we need to present our plan for the project. So it's maybe this question maybe for, I don't know, Samer or whoever like involved in this. So this presentation, if there's more insight, so what should be included, and for how long we will be presenting, like any details about that.
Okay, so Marcel, shall I take the first question, and then you will address the one on the face-to-face?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so on let's say the types of questions that we can get from regulators is actually very wide ranging. It's it can be well, these can be fairly naive questions, really helping the regulators to understand what actually we have done. True, indeed, complete redoing the analysis because they don't agree with the model selected, or they don't agree indeed with the data that we used. They want us to include a certain study as part of the model that we initially excluded. So yes, it can vary very much. And it can be very deep technical questions, really at a, let's say, at the level of non-mem code. It can also be very much more general questions in terms of, so what does this mean for example, those recommendations for this product. So it can go everywhere pretty much. We have seen with certain regulators a certain tendency towards a certain type of questions, but it doesn't guarantee that you always get the same type of questions. You can get really a wide range of questions. So Samara,
I'm just following up for this. So for example, in the case study, it's a pretty complex project. So is there any communication with the regulatory agency, maybe before the analysis, to approve for the plan, or to have their okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that happened in this case, but oftentimes indeed, especially with, let's say, analyses that are planned to support a final submission for registration of a compound, the analysis plan may be sent to the regulators before we actually run the analysis to get their input and indeed their buy-in. For example, indeed in the data selection and in the modeling approach. So yes, and that's in a way a bit of a safety net to prevent them coming with all those questions once you submit the results.
Yeah, and sometimes particularly important when, say, it's first treatment of a given disease. We want to agree with the agency on what type of endpoint, clinical endpoint, is acceptable as a proof of efficacy. We've done that, for example, for the NAS a few years ago indication. So yeah, when you are first first drug in the therapeutic area or a disease, yeah, you try to get things more in advance with the agency to make sure you are on the right track. And from sometimes you mentioned one of your questions of like when the agency require additional studies, that happens sometimes that we have what we call post conditional approval or post approval commitments. So you get approved provided that you run an additional study. So we will see all this during like our course. Like we have some more regulatory oriented modules and drug development overview. So hopefully we'll cover all this during these lectures. In terms of your I would say for the face-to-face, the action item really is most important is that you get in touch. We introduced you to your industry partner, sponsor. So if you've entered in contact with your industry data owner, sponsor, that's good. If not, please let us know as soon as possible. Maybe sometimes people are busy or there is any hurdle preventing you from meeting with your sponsor. So that would be the first step. Meet with them, talk about the project, and start brainstorming on the plan. So, basically in Cape Town, you will be telling us what discussions you've made with the sponsor. Do you have access to the data, or when do you have access to the data? What is the plan of action? So we want to make sure you have a plan, or you are actively developing a plan, so you can progress with your data analysis in the coming months. So yeah, please reach out if you you didn't get in contact with a client, with a sponsor. Please reach out, and we'll help make the connection. And we asked all of you to provide current addresses and phone and contact. I believe all of you already provided it. If not, please reply to our the surveys that Amira sent. So we have everything needed. And after today's input from Rick and the lecture and summary, please try to do your assignments or to consolidate the learning and to understand the regulatory framework we operate in and what kind of document guide us when we develop these models that we submit to regulatory agencies. Okay.
Oh, looks like there are no further questions.
Yeah, no more questions or comment. We can give you some time back, and yeah, please reach out for questions. You can use the Moodle discussion forums or other channels, but yeah, we are here to help you and guide you through the process. Well, thank you very much, Rick, for being with us today. And thanks everyone for being with us.
All right.
Right. Thanks everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.